We're recording?
We're recording, we're just going to live.
Oh, oh.
Right, you're now live.
Okay. Hey, good evening, members, officers, everyone joining us on Zoom. This is the executive meeting for November. Let's start with, I can see we have a full team for the executive. That means there's no apologies for absence. As members of the executive, are you happy for me to sign the minutes from the 19th of October?
Agreed.
Okay, do we have any declarations of interest on anything we'll be discussing this evening?
No. Nothing.
Okay, anything from anyone, any members joining us? No. Okay, thank you. Right, item 4, questions by members for myself or any members of the executive. Okay. No previous lot, okay. I know this is a bit unusual because members are supposed to ask me or members of the executive, but I would like to ask Councillor Mansfield a couple of questions, if I may. Councillor Mansfield, could you just give us an update on where we are with garden waste, please?
Thank you, Lee. Yes, indeed. I'm desperate to clarify because there's been a number of points made on social media about where we are with garden waste. So we had an extra pickup a matter of weeks ago here in Surrey Heath, and the view at the time, quite rightly, obviously, was to suspend the garden waste due to the driver shortages, and we're going into winter, and the fact that we don't expect it to get better. In fact, it has, in fact, slightly got into worse, in fact. And also, we're getting into the flu season, and also COVID is out there. So we have things that are, things that are mounting up against us. However, yes, we will be doing one more extra pickup. However, it will not be within the Surrey Heath area until around towards the end of February of next year. I know that there's been a lot of talk about other local authorities putting one in an extra garden waste pickup, an additional one before Christmas, which I think is going to be extremely challenging. However, I've taken the decision that I wanted to put in another garden waste for Surrey Heath, which we will be doing, but I wanted to be sure that when we give the date out, we will achieve that extra pickup. So yes, we will be having an extra garden waste pickup. I will confirm the dates. The residents will be informed in the same manner that they were informed at the last pickup, and I would expect it to be during the month of February. If I could just also touch on another point regards waste, because there's also a number of social media posts about what happens to some of our food waste. I know it was mentioned at a recent committee meeting where it was suggested that our food waste goes all the way over to the other side of London. Let me just clear this matter up. Our food waste actually goes to a biomass unit that is in fact in Chertsey, which is in Surrey, which is not a million miles away. We have a contract with this particular biomass unit, so that's fairly local. And the other point I'd just like to raise is that we don't send, as it was also mentioned at the committee meeting, endless amounts of trucks every week to this biomass unit. What actually happens is that in Domain Road, we have 2 containers. Each of these containers has between 7 to 8 tons of food waste that can be contained. When they get to be full, they are then moved to the biomass unit that's Echo Park in Shepperton. So that reduces our actual traffic on the road. So thank you, I hope I didn't know. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. You actually answered both my questions there. Just before I move on, I just want to give anybody else an opportunity. Any other questions? Councillor Malvagan.
Thank you, Leader. It's on the same JWS. It came up at PNF. We sorely missed you at the meeting. We couldn't see you. I'm sure you were busy. A point was raised to me in particular by a resident on the refunds. And I did speak to the CEO and he promised to come back. I just want to make it known to the rest of the exec, because when I wrote to JWS, they did say eventually agree to give a refund, but they also added a paragraph in the letter they sent me saying that if you get a refund, you will be coming out of the scheme. There's no guarantee you will get back into the scheme. I mean, I thought it was somewhat cheeky of Amy to say that, because our residents have given £50, and Amy is not planning of running their business based on residents' £50 without providing a service. It seems rather silly and ridiculous, and we should not let them get away with it. I'd like your comments, or Councillor Mansfield's, or the CEO. I don't mind which, but it's got to be dealt with. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Malvagnan. So I had a look at the wording of the letter that went to customers of the garden waste service, and it did make it clear that the customers could ask for a refund. There was reference to getting back into the scheme, but that reference was to make customers aware that if they stayed and extended their subscription, then that was the best way of making sure that when the service was restarted, that they would be able to have the service continue at that point. I'm not aware that anything was written to say that they wouldn't be allowed back into the scheme. And I did look really closely at the wording. So I think that's an interpretation of what the wording said, but the wording was more about the easiest option is to extend, but you still have the opportunity to cancel if that's what you want to do. Thank you, Chair.
Usually, I was going to say, usually Councillor Malvagnan would like to come back. Yeah.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, okay, if you can interpret it that way, but it's important for the residents to have confidence they won't be penalized in any shape or form. I think it's incumbent upon us to give comfort to the residents that they can come back easily. And I'm very uncomfortable. In fact, I'm extremely uncomfortable to leave £50 with Amy for their cash flow purposes. I mean, they are running a business and it's our money they're using. So could you sort of write to them, Leader or the Councillor Mansfield, or even the CEO, maybe all three of you together, and confirm that the monies will be refunded? They shouldn't wait for it. Refund it when the scheme starts, ask for the money back. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Okay, just unpacking that, Councillor Malvagnan. First of all, I don't think the three of us will be getting together to write a letter. I'm more than happy to look at it as you've raised it. I'll have a look at the letter. I think you lost me a bit when you said, you know, they can get a refund and then give the money back and join. I'm not sure, but I get your point, which is if people want to come out of the scheme, and the letter is saying that you may find difficulty getting back in because of numbers, etc., then I'm happy to look at that and get that clarified, and I'll work with Councillor Mansfield to look at that. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Oh, right, Councillor Bates.
Yes, thank you. That's very interesting what's been said there, because I've literally just gone and looked at the actual website. I'm now going to read you what is currently on the website relating to Surrey Heath. So if I just bear with me one moment, I'm now going to read. So Monday, the 15th of November, I will now read the following. Please note that we are not currently accepting new customers to the service. This means that if you cancel your subscription, you will be unable to rejoin the garden waste collection service until we are satisfied it can robustly support the current subscribers. Now, to me, that doesn't mean any interpretation whatsoever. It means that what Councillor Malvagnan was saying is actually correct. That if you basically leave, you are not going to become, you will be penalised because you will now have to wait until everybody else carries on getting their service, and you won't get any opportunity until that has been kind of robustly put in place. So I think, I'm not sure there is an interpretation there. It's pretty obvious to me that that is the correct wording. And I think that wording does need to be robustly challenged, if you don't mind.
As sometimes is the case, Councillor Bates, I actually don't read it that way. I don't, you say it's not open to interpretation. I didn't interpret it the way you did. The alternative, if you were to flip it on its head, would be, we'll be happy to have people back even though we can't cope with it, and they won't get a good service. So it's simply saying, as I understand it, from what you just read out, that we'll be limiting the number of people joining until we're happy we can provide a good service. And I think without seeing the letter, without seeing the web page that you're actually looking at, I do take the point that there's an issue of, you could interpret it that people could be being penalised. I'm happy to take this offline and look at it with Councillor Mansfield, and then I'll come back to people deciding, well, let you know what I've decided to do about it. Thank you. Is there any other hands up I saw? Looked like one, Councillor White there, but you were just changing your glasses, okay? Right. Okay, we'll go on to the item 5, designation Deep Cut Neighbourhood Forum. Councillor Page, this is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, this is the designation of the Deep Cut Neighbourhood Forum. The report recommends that the executive designates a neighbourhood forum for the Deep Cut neighbourhood area. I mean, this is in response to an application made by the group named the Deep Cut Neighbourhood Forum, which is essentially applied to be redesignated. The same group that previously been designated in 2014, but under current legislation, that designation expired after 5 years in 2019. With regard to what the neighbourhood forum does, in areas without a parish council, neighbourhood forums lead the neighbourhood planning process. The designation would enable the development of a neighbourhood plan for the Deep Cut neighbourhood area, which would sit alongside the current core strategy in helping to determine planning applications in that area, much the same way as parish councils get to put their 2 pence worth in when local planning applications come across their desk. The neighbourhood planning provides local communities across the borough with the opportunities to support delivery of our key corporate priorities as set out in our recently agreed 5-year strategy. The neighbourhood forums can only be designated by the council, and the council may only designate a neighbourhood forum where the organisation satisfies various prescribed conditions as set out in the report. And Annex 1 to this item comprises a validation report, and it sets out an assessment of whether the prescribed conditions have been satisfied, and it concludes that the prescribed conditions have indeed been met. The council undertook a 6-week publication consultation on the application as required by the legislation. 2 responses were received, which were generally in favour of the designation. One response highlighted some concerns which are set out in the report alongside the officer's response. No responses were received that raised concerns relating to the compliance with the prescribed conditions. And so it is therefore recommended that the council decides to designate the Deep Cut Neighbourhood Forum. I'm happy to take any further questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Any questions for Councillor Page on that paper? No. Okay. So, members of the executive, we're advised to resolve that the application to designate the neighbourhood forum for the Deep Cut neighbourhood area be approved, and the designated neighbourhood forum be named the Deep Cut neighbourhood forum. Are we all in agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay. Item 6, collectively Camberley levy advance. Councillor Perry, first of many.
Thank you, Chairman. As members know, the borough actually issues the invoices for the bid levy to all businesses which are involved and collects payments on behalf of collectively Camberley bid. Unfortunately, this year, the supply of new software, which is required to manage the process more effectively, has been delayed, which means that the issue of invoices normally sent in October will now be delivered in December. Collectively, Camberley has come to the borough and asked that we make an advance payment to them of 150,000 due on the monies that will be collected on their behalf to enable their operations to continue during the busy Christmas period, whilst the invoices are issued and the cash is accepted. The total collected last year was 217,944, so the risk for the borough looks relatively small. So happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Wheeler? Oh no,
Sorry, I didn't mean to have a thumb up or anything.
That's just a thumbs up saying that you thought that was a really good paper.
No, that's just fat thumbs.
Right, that's just finger trouble. Okay. Okay. All right. Councillor Malvagan?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to confirm that it's under with a bid. We are invoicing, we collect, I understand the process. I mean, what's the impact of the current economic conditions within the high street? Would we be able to collect all the bid money and hand it to them, or would we struggle again? You may not have the answer today, but it's worth for the exec to have a look at it. Thank you.
Okay. I think at last council, I mentioned that we had a very, very high collection rate of both council tax and, in this case, business rates. So I don't think there's any issue where we will be collecting the money. And as Councillor Perry just said, I think you just said, Councillor Perry, that we've collected in the region of 200,000 and we're looking to give an advance of 50. So there would have to be a massive drop off if we didn't get it back immediately. The other thing, as Councillor Perry said, we also collect another 150, 200,000 next year. So there's virtually no chance of this advance not being paid back. All right. Okay, so there's no other questions. The executive is advised to resolve that an advance payment of £150,000 in respect of the 2021-22 bid levy due to be made to Collectively Camberley Limited is done. We agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay. Item 7, Local Council Tax Support Scheme. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. So local council tax support scheme. The current scheme, which is designed to help those who have difficulty in paying their council tax, has proved to be less than perfect. Some very needy applicants fail to meet the stated requirements, whilst others who are more prosperous are receiving help. There's also a very bureaucratic process. So a great deal of discussion has been had between all those involved with the aim of developing a new system which will better target and help those most in need and simplify the administration procedures which are involved. The aim is to increase the level of help for those who need it most and to reduce the time and costs involved in the associated administration. So the request is to approve the proposals in principle and agree that they should move on to a wider consultation process with a view to their adoption from 1st of April 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Okay. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Leader. I was glad to see this paper come to executive, especially as it's been highlighted previously. This has been in place since 2013. As a member of the Community Support Working Group, this is a subject we have discussed at length in the last couple of meetings. It's fair to say that this has been a complicated subject and the officer offered us 2 options. We liked some elements of both, so had him combine those into 3rd option we now have before us. This is a cross-party committee, and having discussed all the options, we agreed unanimously that the solution before us was the best one for our residents.
As with all these things, there is always going to be winners and losers. We have tried to make sure that the option we selected increases support to those most in need, and those who may lose out are protected from the worst effects for a full year. I am happy to support this paper, and I hope the other members of the executive do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, and I echo very much what has just been said there. This is something which I've been pushing for some years actually, and to see the amount of work that's gone into this at an officer and member level is really pleasing. It is true, as Councillor Garrett has said, that there will be some people that lose out on this, and it's important that we recognise that. But what we've done is to try and look at this in the fairest possible way, and so more people will lose than gain. But also, more people will gain than lose. But more importantly, the actual looking at this in terms of a fairness principle, we've gone through this really thoroughly, and it is certainly my belief, and I think shared on a cross-party basis, that this is the fairest possible system that we can have. I'm sure we will look to review it again, hopefully not in 9 years' time or 8 years' time, but in maybe 2 or 3, just to make sure that we're doing this correctly. But I'm certainly pleased to also join others in recommending support for this tonight.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Malvagan.
Thank you, Leader. Again, but like all the other councillors who have actually looked at it, I'm pleased it has come. It's been taken into account very seriously, and the option 3 is the one where most of the councillors, I think all the councillors, went with on a cross-party basis. I must congratulate the officers putting so much effort into actually getting this to the exec. I mean, it is amazing work, truly is. And reading through the detailed papers, it really does reflect the amount of work that is done. It is fair, to be honest. It is extreme. From my reading, it is very fair for the residents. Thank you again to the officers.
Thank you. Okay. Right. Okay, well, before we just go to the recommendation, first of all, I would like to thank the members of the cross-party working group. I know it was a slog. It was probably one of the most complex papers I think I've ever been involved with in understanding it. And Mr. Fox, thank you very much for having the patience and explaining it over and over again in words of one syllable for me. I really appreciate that. So I add my thanks to everyone else's. Okay, we'll move on to the recommendation. And as Councillor Perry said, we're asked to resolve that a consultation be undertaken on the proposed new local tax support scheme with a view to adoption from the 1st of April 2022. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Right. Next item 8, local cycling and walking infrastructure. Councillor Page.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, this report seeks approval for funding to contribute towards the production of a snappily titled Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. And members, I'm just going to refer to it as the plan as I go through this. And this is the plan for Surrey Heath. So this plan is a Department of Transport initiative to help local authorities identify and prioritise improvements to walking and cycling routes in their boroughs with the aim of increasing the use and attractiveness of such routes. The plan will be developed in consultation with stakeholders, and this will include holding workshops with key stakeholders. This would be with cycling groups, walking groups, and other representatives, and obviously councillors. The key output will be a network plan for improving walking and cycling routes in Surrey Heath and a prioritised programme of improved schemes or improvement schemes. Funding for the first phase is £60,000 and a contribution of £20,000 is sought from Surrey Heath, with Surrey County Council contributing £40,000. The second phase of the plan comprises a more detailed feasibility work to develop implementable schemes for the most compelling proposals and those which are most workable with the geography of the borough. So we're looking for 5 cycle and 5 walking routes as those priority areas. So this will include preliminary design work, costings, and the economic benefits assessment to develop a business case to be submitted for infrastructure funding bids. The estimated cost for more detailed phase 2 work is £300,000 and a contribution of £170,000 is requested from Surrey Heath. The SIL main fund has a balance of over 4 million, and it is recommended that the cost of the phase 1 work is paid from this budget and that a sum to cover the cost of the phase 2 work is reserved in this budget for that part. A contractual arrangement will be put in place with Surrey County Council to ensure payment of funding follows the delivery of our key milestones in the production of this cycling and walking plan. The plan schemes will deliver significant benefits, including to help support active travel, and of course will help with our climate change mitigation. The development of the plan for Surrey Heath will provide the opportunities to submit bids for funding to deliver the schemes identified, and officers will review the success of such bids in attracting scheme funding. The report recommendation is to approve the funding request with authority delegated to the Head of Planning Services in consultation with the portfolio holder to agree the final funding amount for the phase 2 of the plan up to a limit of 170,000. If you look at section 1.8 in the main body of the report, government funding is available for this, and we hope that we can get part of about 5 million of infrastructure funding for this. Whilst we initially put seed money in, we hope to get that money back in grants. But so that's the report, and the recommendation is the funding of that money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any questions for Councillor Page? I saw Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Page. I suppose what I'm looking for here is assurances. So we were given assurances before the last local elections that the cycle route between Chobham and Woking had been agreed and had been funded. It is very easy when we sit in the corner of the borough and we more naturally link with other councils rather than Surrey Heath Borough Council for us to be forgotten. So I would obviously like the assurances as soon as possible that that is something that Surrey County Council, having said that they were definitely going to deliver it, it is still on their agenda to deliver it. And also that when we're looking at working with Surrey County Council, we are also considering working with our bordering councils to ensure that connectivity doesn't do as much to isolate us as to connect us. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Page.
Thank you. Not sure if I think the point was making, are we assured that we are going to get some money back to do this? And I'm not sure that there was a question there. Perhaps Councillor Victoria Wheeler could just pose that again, please.
Absolutely, as eloquently and as briefly as I can. The question is, what assurances and how can we be assured that when they are looking at a plan, they are not looking at a Surrey Heath plan, but a plan that connects us to those other borough councils that are linked to our immediate vicinity?
Thank you very much, Councillor Wheeler. Yes, I believe that each borough's plans are going to be joined up, and I take the point about the Chobham to Woking cycle route. That's one that I would like to see for my own family's reasons. I would point out that we have some contractual arrangements in place with Surrey County Council. Surrey County Council are overseeing it so that it has a joined up map, if you like. And we've seen some maps before from them. And I think that they're looking for us to do the work to join up with other boroughs. So that would be part of the planning. So we want some, for want of a better term, some good oven-ready routes that would join up with our neighbours. So four other boroughs are already involved with this plan.
So I suppose the important thing is that we don't end up paying twice, because my understanding is that this route has already has funded allocated, that the research and the work into it has already been done, and that they were assurances that we were given now almost 3 years ago, with the expectation that it sort of would be delivered imminently. So we need to just make sure that Surrey County Council isn't getting that funded more than once.
I'm sure with the publication of this paper that would be the case. No, that wouldn't be the case.
I think, Councillor Wheeler, it's also worth us just taking a little bit of time to go back and make sure that we've identified, as you've said, that this was promised, it was funded, it was planned. The only thing that seems to be missing there is delivered. Right? So I'll take it on board that we will look into that and just make sure that what you're saying is up to date, and we'll make sure that it's part of the plans going forward if it isn't already.
Thank you, Leader. I'm sure you'll have a copy of what was stated and what was promised within your normal sort of central leafleting material, but if not, I'd be very happy to forward the details to you.
Okay, why don't you do that anyway? Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Lugan.
Thank you. I'd like to, I guess, echo Councillor Mrs. Wheeler's comments, but have them extended very specifically to Hampshire, because one of the routes I think that would be very useful, certainly for a cycling route, would be from Camberley to Farnborough main train station. So that's part one. Part two, and again, I have no idea how we get the assurances. Having seen the first cycle route come forward and being consulted on it very recently between Camberley and Frimley, one of the government's guiding principles for these new routes is that they must be direct. And the one thing that the route from Camberley to Frimley is not, is direct. And I think I told that consultation committee that I was going to that very next day cycle down the Frimley Road, which apparently is too dangerous for anyone else to cycle down to the hospital and come back again. And you'll be pleased to see that I made it in one piece. So they have to follow the government guidelines. You cannot put these routes in place and wander all over the borough, doubling the time of the journey. So as a cyclist, I'm very happy to support that we have more cycle routes, but they've got to be usable. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair. Councillor Dugan makes a very good point, and I was involved when I was a junior councillor in parish looking at a route between West End and Brookwood Station, and from Lightwater down all the way through Bisley to Brookwood Station. And it was a wonderful set of routes which stopped and started all the way and gave priority to the car, and didn't look at the obvious route over Streets Heath, which is a sort of open area which could have been used, and using the canal embankment as well. So I think these sorts of things need to be looked at going forward, and I'm sure that this is what the plan's intending for us to do, is to provide local knowledge, help our officers develop a borough plan that's suitable for us and interconnects with without neighbouring authorities. So I'm hoping that's the case.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, oh, sorry. Oh, Councillor Bates.
Thank you. Yes, I also want to raise governance issues with this because I have to say I do have a few red flags on it. Firstly, the amount of money that we're talking about. So we're talking here about Surrey Heath Borough Council spending £190,000, and the actual guarantee of what we'll get at the end of it is nothing, because the government are not guaranteeing that they'll give any money at all. So we'll get a plan out of it with Surrey County Council, but certainly looking at the paperwork I've seen, what in effect the government are doing is encouraging councils to do this. They'll have money available and they'll give priority to those, but there's absolutely no guarantee we'll get anything. So in essence, it's a bit like putting money on a kind of odds-on favourite in a horse race, because it may well come up trumps, but it may not. So we just need to bear that in mind and be upfront about that before we even start about it. The second area has already been alluded to by a couple of councillors, and that is around the governance of this, because this is not money for Surrey County Council to fund their schemes because they're short-staffed, they're kind of lost money, and so a lot of these matters are frankly things that they should be doing anyway and should have done, and in some cases we've heard have not done. And so this is not an opportunity for them to gather up all the things that they should have done by now and committed to doing, and the funds come available for them to do that. This should be about new deliverable schemes. I'm sure that's what the government intended, cycling and walking. It's not about things that they are meant to have already achieved. My concern about this, which is not a reason for us not to proceed, but is a warning, I guess, is regarding who makes the decisions at the end. My view is that this appears to be from the government paperwork on the scheme, that this is a joint initiative. So yes, there would be a lead part person, and when the plans do come forward, if they come forward, there would be what is called a senior responsible owner, which I'm assuming will be Surrey County Council, but that does not mean that Surrey County Council make the decision at the end. What should happen, and hopefully this will be part of the contractual arrangement, which we haven't touched on in much detail, but it's absolutely key here, is to ensure that whatever schemes are put forward are ones that we actually agree with. They're not ones that Surrey County Council solely agree with. They may have a view, and it's important we hear that, but also we have a view, and it's important that that is taken into consideration. So it's not clear to what level of input it should be. In my view, it should be equal. It doesn't say that in 9.1. It says we'll monitor the progress and we'll review the success of funding bids. Well, we need to be doing more than that. If this is money which we are putting in half, we should have half the say. If Surrey County Council don't like that, well, I'm sorry, but we are putting in half the amount. So that should be as part of the governance and agreement that both authorities agree that this is a relevant scheme to be going forward. So don't get me wrong, I think it's absolutely important for climate change, for walking and cycling, but I've just got a few issues with this that I think we just need to iron out. One final thing, which is a more minor thing, and I'm sure it's probably covered from what Councillor Page is saying, stakeholder engagement has to be done from the very beginning, and he did, to be fair, comment about that. And all I would add is I would want to make sure that disability groups are included in that. There are some disability groups who I'm sure would want to comment in detail, and they need to be involved at the very beginning and perhaps even be part of the overall group. But I'll leave that for others to decide. But the governance to me is absolutely critical on this because, again, it's a huge amount of public money and we want to make sure we get it right when there's no guarantee of anything at the end of it.
Okay, Councillor Bates, okay. Several really good points. Working backwards, I don't think anyone would disagree the consultation needs to be as wide and as engaged with the residents as possible. The point about governance is absolutely spot on, and that's a point I'm just going to ask for the Councillor Page and the Chief Exec to pick up and make sure that as we move forward, I don't see it in quite the same way, again, that, you know, we're putting in half each, therefore they'll be leading and we'll be following. I see us leading for Surrey Heath, and the county are providing technical expertise. And that's certainly how I would want to see it set up. It's to come up with 5 walking and 5 cycling schemes, and those are going to be driven by us, but by Surrey Heath Borough Council. And then, as I say, I expect that to be supported technically by the county, and that's how we will definitely be as a starting point in terms of any contractual issues. And your initial point, and it's well put and well understood, that this is, as Councillor Page said, is seed money. And you're right, we'll be putting up to, I think, 170,000, 190,000 pounds, which is half of the amount of money, more or less, that the full sum is. And you're right, there is a possibility that, of course, the government could change its mind or not make the money available, etc. The very question was asked, and we don't have a history of doing seed money where money hasn't come through. And so, again, I think it's worth noting, but I see it as very little risk. Councillor Page, would you agree?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's very incumbent upon us and members. We know our areas the best, so the 5 routes will be prioritised by us. That we, you know, the consultation is absolutely right. Councillor Bates makes some very good points about who the stakeholders should be in that, and cycling, walking, and disabled groups, and that side of things is very, very important. I think also very important is the way that the country's going. We just had COP26. There is a big focus of attention on our carbon footprint and climate change, and I think this is going to be the flavour of things to come. So I think it's very relevant that we should be looking at that. It's very relevant that we should be holding these routes up as being the best that we can provide, and looking at the feasibility side of it. So it all adds up to me that there's quite a lot of thought going into this, and in the past it's not been quite joined up, but now there's the impetus from central government for us to do this. So I think it's only right and proper that we should go down that road, if you forgive the pun.
Thank you. Councillor Bates, do you just want to comment again?
Just quickly, I hope you're right, but I don't read that from the papers. So perhaps we seem to have different interpretations, but and also from the government papers, which you can find on the internet about this. So I think the key part, and this could be dealt with under the legal issues in the contract, is how is it decided what are, I directly quote, most compelling proposals for 5 cycling and 5 walking routes, because they're ones that you're saying are compelling in the views of the borough. That isn't how I think it will happen, but look, I hope you're right. If that is the case, then great, and I'd be very happy to support that. But irrespective of whichever it is right, the key is to make sure the governance is understood. Who makes the final decision about how which routes get put forward, and how is that done? That's all I kind of need to raise at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. I share your nervousness about how it might go with county, but I definitely share your view that we should be fighting our corner for Surrey Heath. I think Councillor Malvaginam, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Leader. It's also following up with what Councillor Bates said on the governance side. I'm delighted that Councillor Wheeler is here today, because she actually raised a point which none of the other councillors would have known, because Councillor Wheeler has been actively following this. For example, was there money used in the past? Was there money committed to this project in the past? If that was the case, I would strongly suggest the exec request the officers, when they produce this report, to actually give a brief summary of the history and the commitment we have made. That way, everyone at a meeting like this is totally aware of it. I hope you are listening to me, Councillor McLafferty, because I don't want to repeat my long question again.
I think the governance point is well made, and I've asked Councillor Wheeler to provide me with whatever paperwork she has, and I'm sure she will. And you're right. If it's been promised and funded, etc., then we'll be looking to deliver. Councillor Wheeler? Oh no, sorry, that was just a thumbs up. It's okay, Councillor Wheeler. That's fine. Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions on this paper? No. Okay. So as Councillor Page has put, we are advised to resolve that funding of £20,000 for phase 1 of the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans be approved, and funding up to £170,000 be approved to be reserved in the SIL main fund for phase 2 of the plan as the council's contribution towards the cost of production of the plan for Surrey Heath, and authority be delegated to the head of planning in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning and people to agree the final funding amount for phase 2 of the plan up to a limit of 170,000. Are we agreed, members?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay. Community infrastructure levy. Councillor Perry.
Thank you again, Chairman. The current community infrastructure levy scheme came into effect in December. Beg your pardon. So the current scheme came into effect December 2014. One of its requirements is that the SIL receipts are reported to the executive every 6 months, and this report is that. So the report details the SIL generated by each ward and how those funds are distributed. An amendment to the government's regulations regarding SIL allows local authorities to agree payments by instalments to encourage developer activity. This authority has partaken in that activity. So the report details all the SIL collected and invoiced in the period. The scheme is designed to produce funds that can be used on projects that will improve the general infrastructure of the borough. We've just heard about one that's coming up. Members with others with the report of with the support of local ward members may bid for support for their local projects. The next bidding window will occur next January. So the actual cash received in this period, which is 1st of April to 30th of April 21, we've actually invoiced a total of 2,926,916. And actual cash collected in the period was 1,577,871. That compares with the previous year, which was April to September 20, when we invoiced 1.6 million and collected just over 700,000. So you can see there's been a big increase in activity in this last period. So the executive just asked to note the report and its contents. Happy to answer any questions there.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Any questions for Councillor Perry on the SIL paper? Okay, thank you. So, members of the executive, we're advised to resolve to note the income received in the period, as set out in Annex 1, the impacts of COVID-19 on income and the amended SIL regulations due to the impact of COVID-19 on the development industry. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Item 10, annual report on the Treasury Management Service and actual Prudential indicators for 2020-2021. Councillor Perry.
Thank you again, Chairman. So the annual report on Treasury Management, in fact, going back for the last year. The report is to advise members of the Treasury Management Service performance during the year and its compliance with the Prudential indicators for 2020 to 21. All Treasury Management Prudential indicators are conducted within the framework of the Code of Practice 2017 edition issued by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. As detailed in the report, all key Treasury Management Prudential indicators have complied with this. The authority also uses Arlene Close Limited as its Treasury Management advisors, and this organisation provides ongoing advice and support, including economic reviews and data on market trends, etc., to assist the borough. The authority has recently approved the Treasury Management Strategy for 2021, the Investment Strategy for 2021, and Borrowing Strategy for 2021. So the actual borrowing throughout the year, which started in this case on the 31st of March 20, we had a total borrowing of 161 million, of which the Public Works Loan Board made up 57 million. We had a long-term loan of 1 million with local authorities and short-term loans from local authorities of 103 million, making a total of 161 million. As of the 31st of March 21, we had 78 million outstanding with the Public Works Loan Board, no long-term loans with local authorities, 102 million short-term loans, making a total of 180 million. The average rate we were paying the Public Works Loan Board at that time was 2.5%, and short-term loans 0.53%, which is much lower. So external investments that we had during the year, beginning of 20, we had investments of 13,593,000, and 31st of March 21, we had 22,394,000. And on that, we earned an average rate of interest of 1.18%. Looking forward to the coming year, the cost of borrowing is likely to increase, and the cost of interest that we could earn on our investments is decreasing. So we've got a bit of a picture exercise going on in that basis. So that's the summary of what's in the report. There's lots more detail there behind it, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Okay. Are there any questions? I have one. If I understood you correctly there, you said that we have a fairly large sum of money that we are borrowing on short term, and I think you said 0.53% interest, and we have money that we, and that same money we could have borrowed from the PWLB, I think you said at 2.5%?
That each tranche we pulled down is a different rate.
Right, okay, but if we had shifted from short-term borrowing to long-term borrowing, I imagine that would have cost us quite a bit more money in interest.
Huge amount of difference, yeah. I mean, it will be millions of pounds difference on the actual repayments we make each year. And that's the difference, and this is why such dependency put on short-term loans, and that is monitored very carefully as we go along. But as you say, the interest rate we're paying in this last period, the Public Works Loan Board, we're paying 2.56%, and we're paying short-term loans 0.53%. So it's like 5 times more expensive to take it from the Public Works Loan Board. And obviously the argument goes that that's, well, at least it's certain for the period in question, but it's what cost is the...
yeah, but why not put your, why not jump into that much higher interest rate once you know that there's, that's the best alternative? Yeah, okay, all right, thank you. Are there any other questions on that one? No, okay, all right, so members, the recommendation is that we're asked to resolve to note the report on Treasury management, including compliance with the 2020-2021 Prudential indicators. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Coming up the home stretch now, Councillor Perry. Item 11, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report for 2021-22.
Yeah, this is covering the period up to the 30th of September this year. The actual borrowing has reduced by 5 million down to 175 million since the March figure. Just a point on the side here, we have an operational limit to go within the Prudential indicators, and that is 230 million. So we're well within the limit which we can work if necessary. So we're down to 175 million. That the makeup of that is 78 million with the Public Works Loan Board, and we're actually paying an average on that of 2.59%, And then we've got 97 million on short-term loans from other local authorities. We're paying an average of 0.05%. So a total there of 2,505,200 per annum. The other disadvantage, if you like, of the Public Works Loan Board is that we are also obligated to pay back part of the capital that we borrowed on an annual basis. This obviously increases the amount of cash that we need to come up with. So in this coming year, in fact, we're going to have to come up with the 4,455,000. You can see that's quite a big difference to what we were paying before we had that application. To answer your question that you raised just now, Chairman, if we had, as suggested by some councillors, fully funded our requirements by way of the Public Works Loan Board, instead of having to find 4,432,000, we would have had to pay 8,907,000 as an annual hit on our cash flow. That's double the amount. So that's why there's some resistance to going totally long-term fixed.
Okay. So double the cash flow and 5 times the cost. Okay.
Well, it's double the cash flow, yeah.
Okay.
On the investment side, obviously our investments in this respect exclude the capital value and income from rentals from properties that we actually own. That's reported separately within the another portfolio. And the figures as of 31st of September, we held investments of that nature of 27,286,000. We were generating return of an average return of 0.42%, which is 114,000, which is again a drop from where we were a year ago. As I mentioned, interest rates on deposits like that have actually gone down in this last year. And some of that is at 0.01%. This is an average figure. So average across all investments, we make it 0.42. So again, happy to answer any questions on that.
Okay, 0.01%
Correct.
interest.
Yeah.
On savings. Okay. Okay. Okay, we're asked to just note this paper. Are there any other questions? Any questions at all? Okay. All right. Okay. Right. In which case, members, the executive is asked to note and comment on the report. Okay. I'll consider we have done. Okay.
Noted.
Noted. Yeah. Okay. Right. That brings us to item 12, which is the exclusion of press and public. We're advised to resolve that under Regulation 4 of the Local Authorities Regulations 2012, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following on the grounds that business may involve likelihood of disclosure of exempt information. Are we agreed?